Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, welcome back to the channel. Some more news about drones and RC model aircraft, the things you're interested in, hopefully so. And well, this is a big one because remote ID is now a thing. Yes, if you're flying a craft that weighs 250 grams or more outside of a free or recreationally, you need to have remote ID fitted to your drone, your model aircraft, your helicopter, your glider, whatever. It's got to have remote ID fitted. And this is the second part of the rule is important because in the first part of the rule, which came into effect, well, supposedly September last year, really December last year, under that first part of the rule, it's the manufacturer's responsibility to fit standard remote ID to any craft they make that is ready to fly. And we know that wasn't enforced, even after December. No one has been, I've seen Tim McKay did a review of a ready-to-fly model on his channel from FMS, I think it was, and it didn't have standard remote ID, even though this was months after that first part of the rule came into effect. Nobody gives a damn. FAA doesn't care. No, but modelers don't care. So it's like, it's a big non-event. Anyway, part two of the rule changes it though, because under part two of the rule, it's now your responsibility. If you've got a drone model aircraft, whatever, you are the one who's now responsible for making sure that it has remote ID fitted and operative. Of course, the FAA were surprised that the modules weren't available, so they have said, we will be expecting people to comply, but we won't necessarily be enforcing the rule until December. If you've made an attempt to comply, you're okay. The reality is, that's just rubbish. Because what constitutes an attempt to comply? Now, we were told by the FAA that $50 modules would be the order of the day. About $50 you'll pay. The reality is you're paying at least twice that. Yeah, there's been some early bird specials. I think, was it Drone Tag had one for $59, then you got to buy antennas and things and shipping from Europe. So that was still nearly $100. We've got the Spectrum Sky ID, which is somewhere $70 or something, I think, but that's going to go up to $100. You've got the flight test, which is $100. So there's all the modules about twice what the FAA were proposing. So if you're attempting to comply, you might have ordered one of these cheap modules, you're waiting for it. And if you, for example, say the FAA did a ramp check, which is where they roll up and say, prove that you're legal, you might say, well, yes, I don't have remote ID, but I've ordered, the $69 one, I'm just waiting for it to arrive. And so what if the FAA get out their phone and go, but hang on a minute, look, you can buy this now today, this remote ID, it's $250, but if you wanted to comply, you could buy this. So we find you non-compliant, we're going to fine you. That's what happens. When you have selective enforcement, when the people enforcing the rules say, we'll use our discretion, that's so open to abuse. It's so, you can't trust that. So there should be either a rule that's enforced or a rule that's not enforced. Full stop. No selective enforcement. They should have just said, even if you're not attempting to comply, you've got until December. And then we'll be checking everyone, making sure you do comply. Not this, we expect you to comply, but maybe you can't. It's too indistinct, it's too airy-fairy, it's crap, it's rubbish, it's bullshit. I've seen this before where regulators and enforcement people give themselves the discretion, which means basically, if we like you, you can get away with it. If you piss us off, we're going to ping you. That is not justice. That is not right. That is not good regulation. Good regulation is black and white. Either you're in compliance or you're not. If you're not in compliance, here's your penalty. If you are in compliance, thank you very much, sir, and good day to you. That's good regulation. We don't see that. FAA has gone exactly the other way on that. And then what makes me even more angry is remote ID. There are some craft that will simply not be able to be compliant. Now, one of the problems, if you fly into Part 107, you have to register every one of your craft and it has to have its own broadcast or own remote ID with its own unique serial number. So let's say you're someone like Joshua Bardwell, JB. He reviews a lot of stuff. And let's say we're coming up to Christmas. There's going to be a lot of small drones coming out. And a lot of people might want them, so it might be a good thing to review these small drones. Let's say you want to review a 20-gram micro drone, and you want to test it outside because people want to know if it flies outside. Well, if you're in America and you're making YouTube videos, you cannot legally test that drone because you'd have to put remote ID on it. You'd have to register it first of all and then put remote ID on it. And if you've got a drone that weighs 20 grams, even the lightest solutions are too heavy. They're going to boost the weight, the all-up takeoff weight by over 50%. And that craft will not fly properly. So even if you do manage to get it to fly and you do a review, it's going to be a crap review because it's going to fly like a pig. So it's killing part of the industry in the USA. The review industry is going to die. I mean, if you get yourself a cheap drone to review, You've got to buy the module to go on it. You've got to register it under Part 107. It's for what purpose? For what purpose? Makes no sense to me. So I think the remote ID thing is complete nut, and I don't see a lot of compliance going on. Yeah, you've got the Tim McKays and the Goody Two-Shoes of the world who are going to line up to comply, but the rest of the hobby is not interested, and it's not going to hurt, because unless you're doing something wrong, you're not going to come to the attention of the FAA. And most of us, let's face it, the 99% of all drone operators fly safely and responsibly. They never come to the attention of enforcement. So why would they need to waste all that money on something that's going to serve absolutely no purpose at all? But somewhere where remote ID would have served a purpose was in the US Marine Corps, because just the other day they lost something. You know, you can lose things. I mean, I've lost stuff, and usually it turns up down the back of the sofa. You know, it might be your keys or a wallet or something. Where did that go? Hunt around. Oh, there it is, behind the cushion on the sofa. So that's where you usually find it. Now, the US Marine Corps lost something, and they got a lot of stuff. They got a lot of crap. So it's only reasonable that they would lose stuff from time to time. But what they lost was kind of out of the ordinary. They lost a $120 million F-35 jet. Yeah. Not an easy thing to lose, but they managed to do it. And in doing so, they broke a whole lot of rules. I hope the FAA is going to clamp down on them, although I suspect the military has some kind of exemption, which they shouldn't do if they're flying in civilian airspace. But here's what happened. Pilot's flying along in his F-35, and he ejects. Why did he eject? We don't know. They won't tell us. Did he push the wrong button? We don't know, because he ejected out of the aircraft, and it was on autopilot when he ejected. So the damn thing just kept flying, just flew away. Now, the moment he left the cockpit, that was no longer a manned aircraft. That was an unmanned aircraft. So look at the rules that were broken. Well, the fact that it flew away on autopilot meant it was BV loss. Flew beyond his visual line of sight. That's why they can't find it. So that's against the rules, right? You can't fly an unmanned aircraft beyond visual line of sight without a waiver. He did. Someone should be fined for this. Then there is the fact that F-35 weighs about 20 tons, depending on the ordnance load and the amount of fuel, about 20 tons. So that's above the 55-pound limit for a unmanned aerial aircraft without special certifications and waivers and things. So again, FAA, step in, find somebody, find someone responsible for this. This is a major breach, far worse than someone perhaps not having remote ID on their model. So I expect to see action on this, because this is the government. They should know better. They should be leading by example. You should not be flying a 20-ton unmanned aerial vehicle beyond your visual line of sight and then lose it, because that means you were not in control. Terrible thing. Anyway, so it kind of makes a mockery of the whole remote ID thing, because if this craft did have remote ID, remember, if you had a 250-gram foam model of the same aircraft and were flying it in a park below, by law you have to have remote ID on it. So it crashes in a bush, you know where it is. Look on your phone, oh, there it is over there, go and get it. This $120 million F-35 flew away with nobody in it, and it's landed somewhere, crashed somewhere, they don't know where, because it's a stealth craft. It doesn't show up on radar. It's designed not to show up on radar. And they turned off the transponder, so it didn't even have its remote ID going. So they've lost it. Now, I suggest they look down the back of the sofa, because you never know. As I say, that's where I find most of my lost stuff. But it just makes a mockery of the whole thing. The little foam toy has to have remote ID. The $120 million, 20-ton unmanned F-35, not important. And God knows where the thing could have gone. It could have flown into a major urban centre and crashed. They don't know where it's gone, but that could have happened. And that's the problem. Manned aviation is just so dangerous compared to drones. And an incident just this week in Italy proved that. An Italian Air Force jet was preparing for an air show, and something went wrong, pilot ejected. The plane then crashed into the ground, killed a 5-year-old child. 5-year-old child on the ground was killed by this jet. Now, the pilot, not seriously injured, but a child died. Now, this is in the name of entertainment. I mean, we see so many deaths in air shows. So many deaths in air shows. There was the one, well, it was a near miss with that Russian swing wing fighter that crashed beside an apartment block in the US recently. We've seen them all over the place. Aircraft crashing at air shows, killing spectators, killing pilots. Yet that's okay. We allow that. That's fine. Yeah, no, that's a level of risk we are prepared to accept. But you cannot fly your little toy drone without remote ID, and you can't fly it over people, and you can't fly it over cars, and you can't fly it over buildings. Because why? Because why? This makes no sense to me. Now, I've been on the planet for over 70 years, and increasingly I'm finding the world a very, very disturbing and confusing place, because we don't seem to be using logical common sense when we make rules and regulations. We seem to be, well, not me, but the regulators are plucking stuff out of their asses. It's like they live in a different world where everything is donuts and coffee, and the world is a sweet place. And so they don't make rules on the basis of need or safety or whatever. They make them on the basis of what will piss people off the most this week. At least model flyers and drone flyers. Let's piss them off a bit more. Let's make them put unnecessary gear on their models to report the position while we allow the US military to fly completely under the radar, effectively, and breaking God knows how many rules. Oh, I don't know. But yeah, I think air shows need to be closely looked at because, let me say it again, I say this in every video. At the time I make this video, there has never been one death attributed to the recreational use of multi-rotor drones anywhere in the world at any time in the history of mankind. That is a perfect safety record. Manned aviation is atrocious by comparison. I mean, in the, let's be generous, say 10 years that drones have been a thing, how many people have died in manned aviation incidents? Hundreds, thousands probably, yet not one as a result of the recreational use of multi-rotor drones. Yet they keep pouring on regulation, restriction and rule on top of us, not causing any deaths, while the manned aviation community is still suffering unreasonable losses. Example, mid-air collisions. There have been so many preventable mid-air collisions between manned aircraft just this year alone in the USA. But they're not required to have ADS-B and Class G airspace. Yet, radio control model of that same aircraft flying in a park needs to have remote ID. Tell me how that is even remotely logical or sensible. Now, still on the subject of remote ID, in the UK, some guy was flying his drone, getting some aerial shots of classic cars, and someone else came out, pulled up their shotgun, and shot the drone out of the sky. Now, that's against the law, obviously, but he shot the drone because he obviously didn't know where the pilot was. So imagine if this was remote ID territory. Imagine if this was the USA and remote ID was a thing, and the guy, instead of pulling out a shotgun, pulled out his smartphone, went doot, 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 said, that's the guy there, went over and shot him. And And in the UK again, and remember the UK has much stricter gun laws than the USA. The gun culture just doesn't exist in the UK. So the fact that there's now been 2 incidents involving firearms in the UK is a worrying thing. First of all, there was a guy confronted a real estate agent with an air pistol and threatened him. That guy got fined, I think it was, didn't go to prison. And now we've got someone shot down a drone. Now, if remote ID comes in, when remote ID comes in, because it's coming to the UK, it's coming to Australia, it's coming to New Zealand, when it comes into these countries, it's increasing the risk to operators because it's telling you exactly where the operator is. And instead of just shooting a drone down, they'll go and confront the operator. Maybe they'll shoot the operator. And the FAA's response to that increased risk is, if you're assaulted, if you're robbed, if you're killed as a result of remote ID giving away your position and you being attacked by a member of the public, just dial 911. With your dead bloody hands, dial 911 on the phone that's been stolen. No, as I say, the FAA live in a different world made of coffee and donuts. And it's not fair for them to impose ridiculous restrictions and regulations on what we've just proven is the safest form of aviation there has ever been. Why are they regulating us like that? We know it's about money. It's about clearing the space, the airspace, for people like Google. And if you need proof of that, well, Google has just announced that in Canberra in Australia, where they've been doing trials with the Wing drone delivery service, they are now changing the model they use. Previously, if you wanted to have your stuff, your hot coffees and your chickens and your donuts, whatever, delivered by Wing, you had to take it to their warehouse. So you had to have a little rotisserie oven at the warehouse, you had to have a barista at the warehouse. So you had to have 2 shops. You had your own shop, which was probably in a shopping centre somewhere, and you had one at that's just my phone, at the Google warehouse. So that was unpractical for most retailers. Now, you're not going to have 2 shops when you only really need to have 1. So what Google has said is we're changing. We're going to not fly from our warehouse anymore. We're going to fly from the shopping centres. So we're going to place our drones at the shopping centres so that the barista who's got his little shop in the shopping centre can take the coffee up to the roof, put on the drone, fly away, deliver. That's fine. So but what does this mean? This means that although you can't fly your own drone over people or cars or buildings because it's way too dangerous, your 250-gram drone, or 260 with remote ID, you can't do that, it's too dangerous to allow. And you can't fly BVLOS, that's too dangerous to allow. Google will do it with scalding hot cups of coffee hanging beneath their Wing drones. So you not only risk getting hit on the head by a Wing drone, but you get scalded by the coffee. Or maybe you'll get, pie in your eye, or who knows what. It's rotisserie chicken up your backside, who knows? But that's okay, because money. Because money. We are being restricted, regulated, and ruled out of existence. But Google and the other commercial operators, come in, give us money, you can do what you like, don't worry about safety. We've fooled the world into thinking drones are unsafe, except your drones. Your drones are quite safe because you've paid us enough money. It's just outrageous. And as I say, after 70 years on the planet, I can't believe people are sitting around accepting all this. Oh yeah, no, that's fine. What happened? When I was a young person in the 70s, it was all about protesting and rebelling and standing up and pushing back. And these days, people just accept what's dished out to them. I just can't believe how passive people are. It's amazing. It confuses me. Are we really humans anymore? Is there a single IQ point left in the world? Because people are just acting so stupidly, accepting stuff that is obviously blatantly wrong. Why? Now, that's probably a subject for another video on my personal channel. But it's crazy. Now, people are probably going to ask, what happened to the pushback for remote ID? What happened to your video? Well, because the FAA deferred the enforcement selectively, I've decided to keep that video in reserve because I'm pretty sure something's going to happen. I'm pretty sure between now and December, something's going to happen. That'll be the time to roll that video out when it's peaked and the interest of the community and the media is peaked by something that's happened relating to remote ID. Then we'll roll out the big gun and say, this is what's coming. You've seen a sample of what's coming. This is what's going to come in the future because of this ridiculous regulation. So we're still going to push that out, but as I say, timing is critical, and to push it out now would be kind of a non-event because the FAA would just turn around and say, oh, we're not enforcing it. Don't worry, it's not a big deal. We're not enforcing it. So we've got to counter that. We've got to think one step ahead of the FAA and the politicians and things. That's what I'm trying to do. In the meantime, thank you for watching. I hope you've learned something. I hope you found something useful in this. Go down to the comments by my man parts and tell me what you think. Did I miss something? Have I misstated something? Have I got it wrong? Fill in the dots, fill in the gaps. And yeah, so there you go. Now, thank you for the people that support me on channel memberships and thanks button and through Patreon. Brilliant, excellent. The weather here is getting warmer, getting sunnier. Summer's on the way. It's the equinox day after tomorrow, I think. I don't know. It's pretty soon. So that's when things start really rolling out. It's been very windy here, but that's spring. That's what you get in the spring. Haven't had an opportunity to fly. The weekends have been not that flash. But they will get better. And I'm looking for a backpack. Now, if anybody out there sells backpacks, makes backpacks suitable for FPV, drop me a line because I'm going to do some backpack FPVing this summer. A lot of walking, try and keep fit, and take my quads with me, try and get some good shots. And if you send me a backpack, I'll review it on RC Model Reviews, and I'll use it, and it'll feature in some of my videos. There you go. Thank you for watching, guys. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you again soon on the XJet channel. Bye for now.
Overregulation is like a tumor. It's killing our hobby. It must be terminated. Now!